What's going on, guys? Andrew Pillock Hockey here, back again for another video. Back in my old space for another NHL trade rumor video, this time covering the Carey Price and Shea Weber talk. Now, I don't think that these talks are like deep into discussion or a guaranteed, trade rumor at this point, but it's been thrown around a little bit and there's been some interesting topics brought up, and TSN even covered it the other day as their countdown to trade center is starting. Is Montreal going to consider a rebuild? If you trade away a guy like Carey Price or Shea Weber, you're basically committing to it because you're getting rid of, your starting goaltender plus your captain, your big defenseman on the back end. So this would be a significant deal that would happen. And sorry if the background's a little messed up right now. I'm still working on fixing it up. But anyways, we'll get to this now. Basically, Michael Bergeron, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, Michael Bergeron could be, of Le Journal de Montréal, believes that General Manager Marc Bergevin should look into trading both Carey Price and Shea Weber. Now, first of all, that would be a significant change for Montreal and their fans, and I'm sure a lot of people would be pretty ticked off. Now, Carey Price is actually coming off of a shutout, so he's kind of silenced some of his critics a little bit, but I don't think that one shutout should really dictate how you feel about Carey Price, especially since he's been the backbone of the Montreal Canadiens for years now, and I feel like some of the trade rumor criticism that he's getting is a little bit unfair because I don't exactly think the Montreal Canadiens are very good. Now, at the beginning of this year, I was actually talking about the fact that I thought that Montreal was actually pretty decent, but they've shown that they had some hot flashes, but then have kind of cooled off. Because last year they overperformed in my eyes, and people were mad at me for saying that. But I really do believe that they overperformed. I don't think that anybody expected them to be, I don't want to say good, but better than what they should have been last year. I really don't think people were expecting it. And then going into this year, I thought maybe they would build off that, but it's not happening. And you can't just blame Carey Price for all of that because, again, the guy is getting paid a lot, but at the same time, he can't do absolutely everything. But, there's been some games this year and in years past where Carey Price has to do everything, and they can't keep relying on him to do that. So let's basically, for a second here, let's just look at his numbers with his contract and, of course, what his numbers are in terms of statistics. So Price is in the second year of his monster 8-year extension. At the time, I was like, okay, this deal makes sense because of his numbers. I thought, with inflation of the cap, this isn't going to, affect them too much. And of course, Montreal has had some money to spend in years past. But he's in the second year of that 8-year, $84 million contract with a $10.5 million AAV. So that is really high considering his numbers right now. That's a big contract. It's signed through the 2025-26 season. And looking at his numbers right now, he's definitely not playing up to that. So as of the time I'm recording this, in 38 games played, he has a 2.87 goals against average and a .907 save percentage. Not, Carey Price type of numbers. If we go back and look at, his full career statistics, of course, I'm not going to name off all of them, but he is 32 years old, so that contract as it goes on could be worse considering the Montreal Canadiens in the next couple years don't exactly look like they're going to be a powerhouse team. And again, that's not all on him. So last year, he had a 2.49 goals against average and a .918 save percentage. Not bad. The year before that, he had a .900 save percentage and a .311 goals against average. Pretty rough for him. He had some injuries as well. And then his numbers previous to that were really good. So you have to hope that he's just going through a bit of a rough stretch. He had those injuries a couple years ago. Last year he was pretty decent, and this year it's kind of been up and down because of the fact that the Montreal Canadiens have been going on hot streaks, and then they've been really cold, and it's not clicking right now. Their team is just not working. So you have to consider the team in front of him as well. I still believe with the amount of money that he's being paid and his numbers right now, it would be a little bit difficult to trade him. There are some teams that apparently have kicked tires on him, but I'm not exactly sure that it makes a ton of sense. We've heard the Colorado Avalanche. I'm just not sure, again, what kind of pieces would be going back and forth there. They do have the cap to make that trade. Of course, we heard that they would be in on Taylor Hall, so they're not afraid to go after a big name and make that move to go towards a Stanley Cup push. There's also Larry Brooks of the New York Post believes that the Carolina Hurricanes would be an interesting team to check in because James Reimer and Peter Mrazek, they don't believe, well, at least Larry Brooks of the New York Post doesn't believe that the Hurricanes could go deep into the playoffs with those two goaltenders, which, you know, Mrazek has already done it before, and Reimer and Mrazek have been putting up decent numbers. Their save percentage at the time I'm recording this is north of .915, at least for Reimer, and Mrazek is at a .905, but both of them have their goals against average at the 2.60 mark, around there, because again, depending on when you're watching this video. But those are decent numbers. I don't know, Carolina would have to shed some salary going the other way too, and because they're in a wild card position right now, I'm not really sure how pumped they would be to add a $10.5 million goaltender. But that Carolina defense is pretty good, so again, it could be a fit. But again, this is just a suggestion from Larry Brooks of the New York Post. I still believe that from the points that people have been making about maybe the Colorado Avalanche, that could make some sense. Like I said, I just don't believe it's going to happen. My thing is like, if you trade Carey Price, who's playing after him? Like Lindgren is there. I believe he's still their backup if we look right now onto their roster. And they probably have some decent prospects, but Charlie Lindgren, like that, it just doesn't make sense. You're basically saying, okay, here's the crease, unless you get a goaltender back in any trade. But there's just nobody to replace him right now. And let's say the Montreal Canadiens go into like a 2-year retooling / rebuilding phase. Price will be like 34, 35 by the time that they're finished that rebuild. That's still relatively, okay. Like, you're hoping that Price can give you a few good years because his contract is still signed up until the 2025-26 season. You're hoping that he's going to give you still a few more good years, that he will play at a decently high level. So I just don't know how much of this makes a ton of sense. And moving over to Shea Weber, if we look at his points, Shea Weber has been a little bit, again, of an up-and-down player for the Habs. I don't exactly feel like he's also really living up to what people want him to do. But again, I don't believe that that's also his fault. And I quite like the way that he plays. He's a physical guy. He is, to me, a playoff-style player. He's physical. He can fight. He can hold his own if he wants to. He can put up points. But he just plays that style of game that you would want in a playoff game. Right now, in 47 games played, again, at the time I'm recording this, he has 32 points, 12 goals, and 20 assists. So just, again, looking into Shea Weber's numbers, he's 34, so he's a little bit older. Might be a little bit more difficult to trade considering his contract as well. Last year in 58 games played for the Habs, how many points did he have? 33? Yeah, so not exactly great numbers for him last year, but again, injury trouble. Then before that, with Montreal, 16-17 season, he had 42 points, and then in 26 games played in the 17-18 season, he had 16 points. So again, not exactly living up to the typical Shea Weber numbers, but this year he's turned it up a little bit and he's looked pretty good. But again, that cap hit, people are not going to want his numbers all the way until his contract is done, because his contract is also up in the 2025-26 season. He is signed at $7.86 million on the cap. So because he's 34, you are saying, okay, we're going for it now if you acquire him. But that's a lot of money to be paying him in, the years coming. So basically, there would be a lot more teams, I feel like, that would be involved in Shea Weber just based off the fact that his numbers are lower. And, with the cap going up, a lot of people are getting paid ridiculous numbers. But I just don't believe that Montreal's going to trade either of these guys, because it doesn't make a ton of sense. And if you want to retool instead of rebuild, you can shed off players that you believe you can acquire assets for and build from there. So basically, there's some other guys that have been tossed around by Pierre LeBrun, Nate Thompson, Marco Scandella, Ilya Kovalchuk. Obviously, a few of these guys have been guys that they've just recently acquired. But you would probably get some decent picks for those guys if you want to put them in a trade. There's also rumors about Thomas Tatar, Jeff Petrie. Maybe they would be interested. LeBron points out maybe my head's all over the place today. Petrie could be a guy that could go to Vegas. So, I mean, again, Montreal has a big decision to make. LeBrun also said that in the coming weeks, they're basically, Bergevin's going to be making a decision based off the fact, okay, are we a seller? I doubt that they want to be a buyer. They're on the outside looking in, but you never know with the Eastern side of the NHL, the Eastern Conference. You win a few games, some teams lose a few, you're right back in the hunt, but I just don't think it makes a ton of sense for them to be a buyer, and I also don't believe that they should be selling off their biggest pieces. I would be intrigued to see if they'd be willing to trade off Max Domi just because of their cap situation. Now, a lot of people seem to think that the Montreal Canadiens have tons of money to spend in the coming years. They don't really in the upcoming offseason. They have $16 million with the cap going up. I would expect it to be around $2 million. They'll probably have around $18 to $19 million to play with. And again, Thomas Tatar has 1 year left on his contract. Gallagher does, but Gallagher's going to be a Hab forever. Max Domi's an RFA. That's a guy that I think is really interesting. If Montreal really wants to do a retooling phase and see if they can bring in a young forward that they can play with their other younger guys that they have on the team, I don't know. It could make sense. Just an idea that I'm throwing out there. Habs have decisions to make. It's no secret. They've got to make a decision here soon whether or not they're going to be a team that sells. I think that it just makes more sense for them to be a seller rather than them be a buyer, of course. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you're new, make sure to subscribe. I really appreciate it. Join the squad. Let's get to 7,000 subscribers. I appreciate you guys as always, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video or stream. Peace.